The moment my son told me to leave his wedding, something inside me didn't break, it went cold. I still hear the music when I close my eyes. Violins, laughter, glasses clinking, and then his voice cutting through it all. "Go now, Mom, my wife doesn't want you here." Every head turned. I remember the weight of their eyes more than his words. My throat tightened, but no sound came out. I had learned long ago that silence can be stronger than defense. So I nodded, smoothed my jacket with steady fingers, and walked out as if this had always been the plan. The air outside felt different, sharp, real. Inside, my son had chosen a side. Outside, I chose dignity. But what no one knew was that this wedding wasn't just a celebration to me. It was the final step in a long arrangement I had been quietly managing for years. Property transfers, legal protections, investments, every sacrifice I made after his father died was tied to one condition: trust. And standing there in the parking lot, watching guests peek through the doors, I felt that trust snap. That night, I opened the old leather folder I kept hidden. Documents lined in perfect order. Some signed. Some waiting. A clause I had added months earlier stared back at me: insurance against betrayal, drafted after subtle warnings I had ignored. His fiancée had been asking questions about assets long before the engagement. I told myself it was curiosity. Now I wasn't so sure. When my phone buzzed at dawn, his name filled the screen. My chest tightened. I knew exactly why he was calling, and for the first time, I let it ring before answering. His voice was softer in the morning, almost careful. "Mom. I need the house documents." No apology. No mention of the wedding. Just business. My fingers curled around the phone, and I suddenly saw the pattern I'd been avoiding. The timing wasn't coincidence. The pressure to finalize paperwork had been building for weeks, disguised as urgency. Now it felt orchestrated. I told him I'd think about it. The silence that followed was heavy. He wasn't expecting resistance. After we hung up, I sat at the kitchen table where I had balanced budgets and signed school forms for decades. Every memory felt like evidence in a trial I never meant to hold. I pulled the folder out again, spreading papers across the table. Ownership structures. Contingency clauses. A notarized amendment I added after overhearing a late-night conversation between him and his fiancée months ago, whispers about liquidation and timing. They thought I was asleep. I wasn't. That amendment ensured no property could change hands without a review period, and my direct approval. The more I read, the clearer the trap became: not theirs, but mine. I had built safeguards because something in me sensed this day. The wedding humiliation wasn't emotional chaos. It was leverage. Remove me publicly. Isolate me. Push the paperwork while I was vulnerable. Another message arrived: we're on a deadline. We. Not he. The word echoed. I stood by the window, watching morning light crawl across the floor, and realized this wasn't about documents anymore. It was about intention. Someone believed I would fold. They forgot who wrote the rules in the first place. I didn't answer his next call. Instead, I called the only person who knew the full architecture of what I had built, my attorney, the one who had helped me design every safeguard after my husband passed. When he heard my voice, he didn't ask what happened. He simply said, "You're activating the review clause, aren't you?" That told me everything. He had been expecting this day almost as much as I had. By noon, I was sitting across from him, the leather folder open between us like a map of quiet wars. He slid one document forward, the amendment tied to behavioral breach. A clause I barely remembered drafting, triggered if coercion or undue pressure could be demonstrated. Public humiliation followed by urgent financial demand. It wasn't emotional interpretation. It was pattern evidence. My chest felt tight, not from fear, but clarity. The wedding scene replayed in my mind, the speed, the certainty in my son's voice. He hadn't looked confused. He had looked rehearsed. My attorney outlined the timeline. If I submitted a formal notice today, every transfer request would freeze. A mandatory inquiry would begin. Financial intentions would be audited. Motive, communication, timing, all examined. It wasn't revenge. It was protection. Then he handed me printed screenshots. Messages flagged during a prior routine asset review. Conversations between my son and his wife discussing liquidation windows, mentioning my emotional predictability. My stomach dropped, but my hands stayed steady. They hadn't just planned paperwork. They had studied me. Walking out of that office, I felt the last illusion dissolve. This wasn't a misunderstanding. It was strategy. And for the first time since the wedding, I wasn't reacting. I was choosing my next move. That evening, my son came to the house. He didn't knock the way he used to, 3 quick taps and a grin waiting on the other side. This knock was sharp, impatient. When I opened the door, he smiled too quickly. His wife stood a step behind him, eyes scanning the room like she was measuring something invisible. "We just need the papers," he said. Simple. Direct. Like rehearsed lines. I invited them in and set the leather folder on the table. Neither of them sat. Their attention locked onto it. I opened it slowly, letting the silence stretch until it became uncomfortable. "I activated a review," I said. The shift was immediate. His wife's posture stiffened. My son blinked. "A review? For what?" "For intent," I answered calmly. "Every request tied to these assets is now frozen pending investigation." His voice rose. "Mom, that's ridiculous, we're on a timeline." "Yes," I said softly. "You are." I slid the printed messages across the table. Their color drained in perfect sync. He didn't touch the papers. She did, just enough to confirm what they were. "You planned pressure," I continued. "You counted on humiliation to make me fold. But you forgot something important." He finally looked at me, not as his mother, but as the architect of everything he stood to inherit. "I don't sign under pressure," I said. "And I don't reward betrayal." The room went silent. No shouting. No drama. Just reality settling into place. The safeguards would hold. The audit would run its course. Whatever remained afterward would be determined by truth, not manipulation. They left without another word. When the door closed, I exhaled, not in relief, but in resolution. My son hadn't lost everything. He had lost the shortcut. What happened next would depend on what he chose to rebuild, trust, or distance. And this time, the rules were clear.